Hello, fourth year students. Today we have a new lecture in modern poetry, and we are going to start with a new poet, a new English poet. And the poem is entitled At Grass. Of course, when we speak about the modern poetry, we are talking about a number of features that we have already discussed before. We have seen many examples of poets from this period, from this time, or let's say from this age. But still, what makes this modern period so interesting is that we can find variety of movements, variety of poetry that depends or let's say is based on certain concepts or certain theories of or understanding of the new conditions of society. So it's always interesting to find what each poet in this modern period has to say, or what is his reaction, what is this thing that he sees about this new situation in society. So, and as usual, before we start with the poem, we need to know something about the poet and about the poem in general. So Philip Larkin, what do we know about him? Larkin is usually associated with the movement poets. So it is called it's not a movement, or let's say it is, according to the historians and critics, it wasn't, let's say, a movement as a whole, so that we can give it a name. No, just a group of poets, and they decided to call them movement poets. You see, it seems that it's not very clear what are the features of this group of poets, so they called them movement poets. A group that emerged in England in the 1950s. In the 1950s, and this time period is really crucial if we think about it. When we speak about the 1950s, we are talking about society which has emerged after a huge war, the Second World War. It is this time period, so we can think of the literature that was written in this period as a reflection of the kind of feelings, the kind of atmosphere that people had after the war, directly after the war, the aftermath. We are talking about the aftermath of the Second World War. So it's really important to think about the time that we are talking here. What time was it in which Philip Larkin lived and wrote his poetry? It's a very crucial time. So these poets rejected the over-experimentation and the elusive nature of the modernist poets. The poets who came before, like for example Eliot and Pound, and we have studied the poetry of Eliot, and we have studied the poetry of Pound. And what kind of let's say, what kind of poetry did we find? Here it is called over-experimentation and elusive. If you remember, or if you have came across, or some of you maybe have studied Eliot's The Wasteland, for example. This poem is not easy to read and understand. Actually, it's a tiresome task to read this poem. Why? Because it needs someone to be really well read in order to understand all the allusions that Eliot is stating in this poem. Sometimes he uses expressions from other languages. I think the Sanskrit language or something like this. So who can read such poetry? Who can read such poetry? Just those who are, let's say, maybe scholars, maybe academic, well-read people who are overeducated, not only educated, overeducated. So is it a poetry that is suitable for ordinary people to read and to enjoy? No, actually, that's why, and we see that Eliot wasn't very popular among the regular readers, or let's say just the people who like to enjoy literature. And he did it on purpose. Eliot did this on purpose because he thought that poetry should be for the elite. This is his point. Okay, he didn't like this kind of poetry and this kind of let's say ideas that were starting to spread, that Poetry should be free, should speak about anything, anyone should be free to speak out their own feelings. He didn't like this kind of romantic, it feels like romantic actually. And Pound also, Pound was more related to the experimentation part of poetry, over experimentation. Okay, so Larkin and other poets, when they saw these two kind of or let's say when they saw that poetry, either it is over experimenting with, let's say, new rhymes, new forms, or it is filled with allusions to things that we cannot understand unless we go read about them, so it's very, very difficult. Or either it is what, inclined towards romantic tradition, okay, which what, which encourages bursts of emotion. Bursts of emotion, we all know also romantic poetry, we have studied poems by the romantic poets, and we have seen that it is very individualistic, it's very emotional, sentimental, it focuses on the individual identity. So Larkin and the other poets saw that why do we need to be like this, either very modernist difficult poetry or the romantic emotional poetry, revolutionary, even we can call it rebellious poetry, the romantic one. So why do we need to be like this? Do you think that the modern typical ordinary man, common man who lives in the modern age in this time really need or is able to read such poetry? Does it express his fears? Does it express his real life, his problems, his worries, his anxiety? Larkin would say no. So what kind of poetry do we need? Their poetry, so here comes what they have to offer, what they wanted to express through poetry. Their poetry is rather intellectual and not sentimental. So this part they go against the romantics. No overuse of, let's say, emotions and speaking about the feelings of pain and love and let's say these kind of expressions that seems to be coming out of the moment just randomly. No, here we are talking about things that are intellectual, فكري، يعني أمور فكرية ترتبط بالفكر. It is a reflection of the frustration, suffering, and anger of the common man. So the common man who has come out of the let's say the Second World War, which was devastating, which was so destructive. Do you think that the kind of poetry that the modernists or the romantic offer express his own feelings and worries? No. Express this kind of feeling that was dominant after war, which is what? Frustration, suffering, anger. الجيل اللي بعد الحرب العالمية الثانية كان جيل غاضب، يشعر بالإحباط. ليش? Why? Because you see, all the kind of values or principles or human values that we all believe in were all totally destroyed in war. الحرب تقتل مو بس الناس، تقتل حتى إيمان الإنسان بالقيم والمبادئ الإنسانية. بعد ما يشوف الفظائع، بعد ما يشوف الموت، بعد ما يشوف الدمار اللي ينشأ بسبب الحرب، يفقد إيمانه بالإنسانية وبالقيم الإنسانية. You see? So in the face of such kind of destruction, which is very deeply psychological destruction, what kind of poetry do you need? What kind of poetry? Realistic poetry that deals with the problems, realistic problems from real life. Okay, trying to face what does this poetry do? Trying to face the ugliness of the modern life, and it is a kind of disenchanting. And one of the poets who tried to do this was also Odin. You remember Odin, the Unknown Citizen, Musée des Beaux-Arts, that we have also studied and analyzed. He was one of those poets also who wanted to disenchant, to de-romanticize. يعني ينتزع السحر، ينتزع هاي الطابع الرومانسي من الأشياء، يبينها على حقيقتها. See, so this is the kind of poetry we need, according to Larkin. Poetry that shows the ugliness of life in front of these people so that they can understand. First of all, it gives them kind of solace or comfort that there is someone who really knows what kind of feelings they have. And at the same time, it could be, let's say, a kind of awakening to face the ugliness of life, to know how to deal with it. Could be. So let's face this ugliness rather than referring to it as a barren land of a lost generation. This is what Eliot, for example, did in his poetry. This is what many other modern writers, not only poets, also writers. We all know the lost generation. We know this term. تعرفون هذا المصطلح, lost generation. Group of writers على رأسهم كان هيمنغواي. سموا نفسهم the lost generation, الجيل الضائع. Okay, so we need to know all these things before we start with the poem, so that we see how did Larkin use or employ his own understanding of poetry to his poems. So the subjects, let's see what we need to know about the poem now. The subjects in his poems relate to common occurrences and daily happenings, so it is what we expect to find actually after we have known all the kind of information about his poetry, about the movement poets. So what kind of things we expect to find in his poems? Daily occurrences and happenings, things that are common, that, for example, if you go outside, you can see around things that are very familiar to us as readers. We experience them every day. In the poem At Grass, he meditates upon a number of retired race horses. So at grass, طبعا تعرفون grass معناها العشب، في العشب يعني. What is this poem about? It's not very difficult. يعني he really applies what he believes that poetry should be like. يعني قصيدة جدا خلينا نقول مفرداتها مو صعبة، بسيطة، حتى فكرتها يعني أو المشهد اللي صوره بالقصيدة مشهد جدا طبيعي وجدا اعتيادي، which is what? Retired race horses. Okay, I'm not sure if he has seen them in reality or he just remembers something he saw on TV or maybe or a documentary. I read that he has never been to a horse race. Okay, maybe he has seen this on TV or maybe a documentary. Some say that he has seen a documentary about horses and he wrote this poem upon what he has seen. So race horses, we know that England is a country that has this kind of interest in race horses. The royalties actually have this kind of interest as well, the British royalty. So race horses is something related to the identity of England as a country, as a culture. So these horses are retired now. You know that the horses has a certain time, youth, they are very powerful. They are used in these races. And here it says they are a tangible reality which anybody could have witnessed. So we all have seen horses, whether in front of us in real life or maybe somewhere on the screen, on TV, on the internet. And maybe some of us happen to see real races, horse races, or maybe some who has interest in such sport. So it is not something strange, not, for example, something supernatural. It is not something that we need to go and read about, just like, for example, in the modernist poetry, the other kind of poetry. So this is number one, and then the poem is from his collection of poetry, The Less Deceived, which was first published in 1955. So I think it's almost sorry, today my voice is not helping me. So I think it's in the year 10 years after the end of 10 years, yes, I think after the end of the Second World War. So this is the poem, and here are some notes about it. Okay, so let's see. The eye can hardly pick them out from the cold shade they shelter in, till wind distresses tail and mane, then one crops grass and moves about, the other seeming to look on and stands anonymous again. So from the very beginning, notice here, the eye can hardly pick them. From the very first line in the poem, the poet is telling us about them. Who are they? We all know that when we use them in language, we should have mentioned before who are these things that we are going to replace their names with the pronoun them. We should have mentioned them earlier, but from the very beginning he wants us to feel with him that these horses that he's looking at from a distance now, they seem to be totally anonymous. You know this word, anonymous. مجهولين, unknown. See, they look like any horses now. From the time he's looking at them, they look like any horses that he could see anywhere. But here we need to see what's the point of this. What's the point of making us feel like this? Actually, it is related to these horses being race horses. We know that these race horses, they are given names. They become famous. Even they become very well known and famous because people bet on them. They pay money. For example, that this horse is going to win, so they give money and they try to, let's say, if they are cheering this horse or that horse, so it's kind of competition between people about these horses. So actually they were really interesting horses before, well known, famous. And where they are standing, they're standing in some shady area. There is this shade and they are standing under this place, and it seems they are relaxed. See, not like when they usually were really training all the time. They were busy in these races. Now they seem to be really calm, relaxed in this spot. It's of course it's filled with grass. It is there is this place shade, and they are sheltering in this place. So the situation of these horses now contrast with their situation when they were racing before. Notice here, the speaker first observes the horses as an unspecified them, and they are hardly noticeable from where he is standing. First of all, he couldn't notice. What makes them noticeable? Notice here, till wind distresses tail and mane. Some wind blows and it moves the tail, okay, and then they are recognized by the person who's passing by. Then one crops grass. One of them is eating grass and moving around, and the other seeming to look on and stands anonymous again. It's very actually the use of this word here is on purpose. Okay, so their situation, they are unknown now, unlike when they were famous race horses. It's really interesting. Yet 15 years ago, if we go back in time, perhaps 2 dozen distances sufficed to fable them. You see, just running for, let's say, 2 dozen distances, running for some, let's say, long distance in a race could make them really some kind of famous, interesting story that everyone is talking about. See, to fable them to, it means to make them legendary, to give them importance, to give them significance, to glorify them. See, that was when 15 years ago. Okay, 15 years ago they were at the center of attention at the races, surrounded by excited concern, trophies. Notice here, if we go on, afternoons of cups and stakes and handicaps. In these occasions, if you have ever seen one of them on TV, you see people are excited, cheering, and then when there is a winner, there is this kind of celebration. The cups are given. People are very excited, crying, screaming out of joy. So actually these kind of engagements before, they were very, very beautiful, wild, and people used to enjoy them, and they were a chance for, let's say, such gatherings. It was a chance of engagement, social engagement. You see, so all these kind of things, what happened to them now? You see, this is the point. Always put in mind when you are reading this poem that the poet is trying to make the reader look at this thing just like him, to compare what was in the past and what is happening now. Why is it important to make this kind of comparison? We are going to see actually what does it do to the main theme. So what are these things from the past? يعني مو بس السباق، لا، كان اكو اشياء ايضا ترافق السباق. كان حدث، يعني هو حدث بكثير من الامور. We have trophies. Notice here crowds and the colors of the silk. You see, silk. Why not any other kind of clothes or clothing? حرير. It is kind of let's say it is a sign of elegance. الحرير هو نوع من الأقمشة الفاخرة. You see, so it wasn't just let's say a usual time that they had when they were race horses. It was a luxurious time. It was luxurious. It was a time of glory. You see, but now what are they? They are part of memory, just a memory. All these things have become memory. And the horses are retired. يعني حيلت إلى التقاعد مثل ما نقول. Whereby their names were artificed. So when a horse wins a race, their names are engraved on the cups. يعني كانوا شايفين حتى هسه اللي مثلا يربح جائزة أو يربح فد كأس ينحتون اسمه على الجائزة. Where does that all go? It goes away. It faded. See, this is the word used here. Faded. Classic Junes. It was in summer. هالفعاليات كلها كانت بالصيف، وكانت يعني فد فعاليات جدا يعني هيك ينشغلون بها الناس وكانت فد أشياء يعني من طبيعة المجتمع. يعني this is part of the community's culture and identity. Such kind of activities that were held in the time period. And think about this, 15 years ago. يعني قبل ايش قد؟ قبل 15 سنة. Do you think this is significant? Why 15 years? Why, for example, not 20? Why not, for example, maybe 30 or 40 years ago? Which makes it what? Makes it very, very long time ago. But 15, if you think about it, 15 is not very long time in the past. يعني ترى 15 سنة مو هواي، مو فترة كلش بعيدة تعتبر. But when we think about the time that the poem was written 15 years ago, what are you talking about? It was written in 1955 مو 1955، والحرب انتهت 1945. مو تمام؟ 10 سنين فرق. مو تمام؟ خلي وياها 5 سنين قبل الحرب، يعني هي الحرب 4 سنين استمرت، سنة ضيف عليها من قبل الحرب 15 سنة. ليش؟ هذا يرجعنا ليا زمن. it makes us go back where 15 years ago. where to the what time before the war takes place. قبل الحرب مباشرة. What was there before war? Before war, actually, people were living their lives normally, enjoying life. England before war was not the same as it is after war. And this is the point. Of course, he's talking about horses, regular horses, any horses that we can see, retired race horses. But what's the point of mentioning them, describing them, talking about them? Actually, it makes us also think of these beautiful, relaxing times before war. How the English society have changed, when now it seems that people are not really interested anymore in such activities. Why? Because after war, we said people were angry, they were frustrated. Okay, so war has not only taken lives, it has also taken people's interest and culture and identity. حتى هوية المجتمعات تغيرت، هويتها الثقافية، هويتها الإنسانية تغيرت بعد الحرب. You see, I think this is the point, and this is a really interesting point to mention here. So the horses are shown to have been elegant by using formal and ceremonious language. How does Larkin achieve this kind of let's say tone or atmosphere in the poem? Notice the use of some words, not all of them, of course. For example, when he says distress, the wind distress، يعني هي الريح تحرك، المفروض يعني هي الريح من تجي مثلا تحرك ذيل الحصان، فواحد ممكن ينتبه اكو حصان موجود على بعد مسافة. فماكو داعي استخدم كلمة يعني صعبة، لا، اقدر استخدم كلمة بسيطة. بس لاركن شي يسوي هنا؟ يتعمد يستخدم هذا النوع من الكلمات. What kind of language? Formal, you feel like it is a formal language, and ceremonious, like he's talking about something great. Okay, we have also other words, like for example fable. See, fable, artifice, faded, classic Jones. So the kind of language he used also helped us in having this kind of impression about the poem. Okay, let's see what else we have. Silks at the start, against the sky, numbers and parcels, outside, squadrons of empty cars and heat. What was it like? Now he's taking us to a scene of usual race. What happens in this race? What are the things that you can see if you go to one of these races? He's trying to take us to the this one of these places, and to make us imagine and feel what is it like. And notice here the punctuation. لاحظوا استخدام النقطتين هنا، the columns and also the comma اللي احنا بالشعر ما نسميها comma، طبعا نسميها سجرة. Okay. As if he is enumerating, and he's trying to also to engage us with this kind of atmosphere. If you go into one of these activities, actually it's not of course a quiet one. يعني هي هاي المهرجانات او هاي المسابقات ما تكون هادئة، شيء طبيعي، خاصة احنا نحكي فصل الصيف. The heat, the empty cars. Why? Because people have left their cars and they are going inside in the arena in order to see the race. Let's say The numbers, the parcels, you see when the race starts, there are numbers counting, for example, the time that this horse needs to win or to cross the whole distance, or what is the distance that this horse was able to cover. So all this kind of energy that you find in such place. And littered grass, then the long cry hanging unhushed when one of the horses wins. Those who are cheering this horse, they are going to cry out of excitement. مو شلون مثل كرة القدم من يطلع جول، هاي كل هالجماهير كلها تقوم تصيح صيحة واحدة. مو the same happens in race horses. So this cry of happiness, of excitement, is also reported, as we are going to see, where in the press, till it subside to stop press columns on the street. Okay, so it was a time of joy and luxury. In those past days, June afternoons were the time of engagement with the horse races. The heat, the cars, the people's cry of excitement after a win is achieved, and then it becomes a piece of news. بعد ما بعدين هذا مو بس حدث هيجي الناس تستمتع به، لا بعدين أيضا الصحف تتناقله أيضا. The heat which contrasts with the cold shade. This is interesting. We can think about it also like this. When we read this stanza, we are going to see that again, the description of this scene also contrasts the heat, the excitement that he describes in this scene, contrast with the situation of the horses now, which seems very cold, relaxed, quiet. They are standing there quietly eating grass. They are not required to train, for example. So there is a contrast. Okay, so the heat which contrasts with the cold shade in which they now shelter. Think about it like this. Now, let's see what else we have in this stanza. Do memories plague their ears like flies? Now it seems that after describing the scene here, he shifts the attention to now, this moment, now. Do memories plague their ears like flies? This is a question, and it is a rhetorical question. Sorry, here I should have written rhetorical question. What is he asking? Memories, and we have this word plague, interesting, it is used here as a verb, and flies. Here, these words are interesting here, and it is strange that they are placed together. Why? Because we know what is meant by memories. ذكريات, مو memories. Memories plague their ears. Now they are retired horses. Do they remember the time they were glorious? They were, let's say, training. They were racing. Do they remember these things? And we all know that, of course, they are animals and maybe they don't have this. We as human beings, yes, we have memories. يعني هاي فد ميزة عند الإنسان اللي هي الذاكرة، يقدر يسترجع أشياء أو تجارب أو أشياء أو صور من الماضي. Okay? But here, notice the mentioning of memories. Plague يعني هي جاي من كلمة وباء أو طاعون. So memories come to the mind just like a plague, as if they are a disease, they are annoying. يعني الذكريات، شوفوا هنا في شيء مميز. يعني ذكريات عادة احنا نقول يعني كثير من الأحيان ترتبط إذا الإنسان مثلا قاعد يتأمل يتذكر أشياء خلينا نقول هي قد تكون مهمة تمس أشياء حلوة. But sometimes you don't want these memories and they look like something really annoying, but they come to your mind just like what? As if there are flies around. يعني مثل الذباب. Okay? مثل الذباب. شلون الذباب يصير مزعج. No matter how many times you remove them, you try to clear them away, the flies, they come to you again. So this is the way that he's talking about memories. ذكريات مزعجة. Do these horses have such a thing? Is there a memory that comes to them from these old days? and they clear it away just like they clear away flies. شايفين الحصان من يهز، من تيجي عليه مثلا يجي عليه ذباب يقوم يحرك راسه حتى يوخرها. Maybe the speaker was looking at the horses and he saw them do this, and he asked this question, which of course is a rhetorical question, a metaphorical question. Do memories plague their ears like flies, just like what happens with human beings when they remember things they don't want to remember? What kind of things human beings would not like to remember? Of course, painful experiences, just like the experience of war, right? So what Larkin suggests here is that we succumb to memories like a disease. Succumb يعني نستسلم, surrender, like a disease, and he manages to make the abstract notion of memories, الذكريات هي تعتبر في شيء يعني فكرة أفكار شيء نظري abstract مجرد, vividly concrete. يعني هنا صار أكو نوع من المقارنة بس بشكل غير مباشر بين الذكريات وبين الذباب. Okay? He makes us what? Think of them as if they are something concrete and tangible in the simile, لاحظوا كأنه أكو تشبيه, with flies, which are themselves literally present around the horses' heads. يعني هو يجوز شاف المشهد قدامه فتخيل انه ممكن يسوي هذا النوع من المقارنة بين الذباب وبين الذكريات. They shake their heads, you see? They shake their heads. Dusk brims the shadows. Summer by summer all stole away. Dusk, what time of the day? It is the beginning of the evening, الغروب. And when we are talking about in literature, usually we associate the ends, the beginning of ends, with sunset, with dusk. Okay, summer by summer, so year after year, all stole away. All stole away. What happened to all these beautiful things in the past? They are gone. Stole away by لاحظوا استخدام كلمة stole من steal, سرقت. سرقة. It was by force, okay, that all these beautiful things are gone. The starting gates, the crowd and cries. Starting gates, you know, يعني من ينادي يصير سباق وأكو هاي البوابة الأبواب قدام كل حصان البوابة تكون مغلقة، من يبدأ السباق يفتحونها وينطلق الحصان، هاي يسموها starting gates. The crowd and the cries, all these, you see, noise and all this kind of energy, crowds, cries, all but the unmolesting meadows. All are gone. كل هاي الأشياء راحت صارت شيء من الماضي. What is left? The unmolesting meadows. ما بقت غير هاي المروج الخضراء. Okay? Almanacked, their names live. They they have slipped their names and stand at ease. So these horses, they look as if they have left everything behind, even their names اللي هي كانت أسماء مشهورة ومعروفة. They were really famous names. They were all the time mentioned in newspapers, in the press. It seems that these horses have left behind all the glory, and now they are standing at ease. Stand at ease. Their attitude looks like someone who has relaxed now, doesn't want all the kind of engagement that was in the past. Okay, all they are doing now is what? Or gallop for what must be joy. Now they are moving around. Maybe if they wanted to move or to run, it is just for joy, not because they are racing. Okay, and not a field glass sees them home. Okay, field glass. You see دول الجمهور مرات عندهم هاي الناظور يتابعون بيه، يعني شلون مثلا الحصان إذا يبتعد شوية مسافة والأرينا كلش كبيرة، فشلون يتابعوه، شلون يظلون يشوفوه، عندهم هاي الفيلد glass الناظور يشوفون بيه. Now there are no field glasses. Even these things have gone now. Okay? or curious stopwatch prophecies. هاي شايفين من يقول تنبؤات منو راح يفوز prophecies, who's going to win, this horse, that horse. كل هاي توقفت راحت انتهت. okay, only the grooms and the groom's boy, هذول السائس يسمونه, هذا اللي يعتني بالحصان, with bridles in the evening come. So sometimes the grooms come to check on them, take care of them, and they are all the time relaxed at grass. You see, فالتعبير idiomatic مرتبط بgrass اللي هو retirement, هم له علاقة بالretirement. You can check it. Okay, so the scene shifts again to the present. هنا بالستانزا الأخيرة كأنما دي يرجعنا للحظة الآن, now. قبل شوية خلانا نتخيل مشاهد من الماضي. Now he's taking us to the present. The horses looking as if they have left their names behind. They are alone, free of the field glasses and stopwatch, visited only by the groom and the groom's boy in the evening of their lives. Okay? Unlike man, هسه الواحد ممكن شنو يستفاد من هاي القصيدة أو شي يستخلص. Unlike man, they have no illusions, regrets, fears, doubts, even though the evening may be drawing to its ultimate close. So, if we think about these horses, they are just animals. They don't have this kind of consciousness and awareness that humans have about their lives. تمام, ما عندهم نفس هاي عند الإنسان. المخاوف, fears, doubts, regrets. Now, for us human beings, when we become old, when we lose things in our past life, we start to think about them. It comes to us all the time. We regret, we fear, we doubt. But for horses, this is not happening. We have illusions. كانت عندنا أوهام, أشياء كنا نشوفها بشكل بعدين اكتشفنا إنه هي مو حقيقة. Okay? The poem portrays a repose, a contentment. Okay? يعني شوف this poem is kind of meditation, نوع من التأمل. Okay? This is meditation. And it is a meditation that it seems not to cry over the past. اوكي, صح, هو هذا يذكر انه هاي الامور, او احنا يعني استنتجنا وفهمنا انه هو يتكلم عن انه مقارنه بين الوضع في الماضي والوضع الحالي. بعض النقاد قالوا انه it symbolizes England, the imperial England in the past. تعرفون انجلترا بعد الحرب العالميه الاولى والثانيه كانت هي قبلها كانت امبرياليه, كانت امبراطوريه ضخمه, عندها مستعمرات وعندها, بس بعدها يعني تفككت, ما عندها هاي القوة الاستعمارية مثل قبل. Some say that actually this is kind of symbolizing this situation. I'm not sure if we can go with this interpretation, but from the language and style and the tone, I believe that Larkin is contemplating, he is meditating quietly and calmly over this situation, and he's not crying over the past. He's not lamenting, just like, for example, Eliot, for example. These horses possess a tranquility beyond humanity's grasp. We should learn, actually, from these horses. As humans, maybe we don't have this ability, but we can have it. Okay? If we meditate, if we think about things, the reality of things, how illusions delude us, we have to think about it. They have reconciled themselves with the change of time and space, and as human beings we should be able to do this. Larkin is here realistic and sensibly accept this. I believe so, because he doesn't show any kind of negative reaction to these horses. He doesn't show any kind of sadness or melancholy. No, actually it is a very calm and quiet meditation over the situation of these horses that reaches to a certain understanding of life. This is what I believe, and I think it is a more realistic, and it is very or let's say it confirms with the movement poets that we have mentioned in the beginning. That is all for At Grass by Philip Larkin. I hope it was helpful. See you in next videos. Thank you.